You're listening to the CyberWire Network, powered by N2K.
N2K has teamed up with AWS to bring you AWS in Orbit, a groundbreaking new series that explores the impact of space technology, cloud computing, and generative AI. Hi, I'm Maria Varmazes, and in this series, I speak with industry leaders to give you a nuanced understanding of how these technologies are revolutionizing sectors like sustainability, critical infrastructure, and cybersecurity. So if you're drawn to big ideas and are curious how space and cloud technologies are impacting life here on Earth, this series is for you. Follow the T- Space Daily podcast to catch every episode of AWS in Orbit and visit space.n2k.com/AWS to stay ahead of the curve.
From dozens of spreadsheets and screenshots to fragmented tools and manual security reviews, managing the requirements for modern compliance and security programs is increasingly challenging. Vanta is the leading trust management platform that helps you centralize your efforts to establish trust and enable growth across your organization. Over 6,000 companies partner with Vanta to automate compliance, strengthen security posture, streamline security reviews, and reduce third-party risk. CyberWire Daily listeners can get $1,000 off Vanta by going to vanta.com/cyber. That's VANTA.com/cyber. The UK faces a looming threat of catastrophic ransomware. The Senate confirms a new national cyber director. The rivalry between malware groups BatLoader and FakeBat, BazarCall phishing attack, and its unusual use of Google Forms. A serious vulnerability threatens K-12 student data. The Spiderman game developer Insomniac Games becomes the latest ransomware victim. Today's guest is Tim Starks from the Washington Post's Cybersecurity 202, with China's influence operations in Taiwan, along with a look back at 2023. We'll touch on Microsoft's Patch Tuesday and why outdated password policies are still a problem. It's Wednesday, December 13th, 2023. I'm Dave Bittner, and this is your CyberWire Intel Briefing. We begin today with news from The Guardian that the UK government is reportedly at high risk of a catastrophic ransomware attack due to insufficient planning and investment, as warned by a parliamentary committee. The Joint Committee on National Security Strategy highlighted the UK's vulnerability to a major cyber attack on its critical national infrastructure, which includes essential assets like energy, water, transportation, health, and telecommunications. Recent examples of such attacks include the NHS incident last year, where patient data was compromised, and the 2020 Redcar and Cleveland Council ransomware attack, which led to weeks of system lockdown and costly damages. The government, particularly the Home Office and former Home Secretary Suella Braverman, have been criticized for not prioritizing ransomware as a policy issue, focusing instead on issues like illegal migration. The report stressed that the UK's CNI is dependent on private third-party IT systems, making it more susceptible to cyber attacks. Future attacks could threaten physical security or human life, for instance, by sabotaging CNI operations or hijacking cyber-physical systems like shipping vessels. The NHS is noted as particularly at risk due to outdated IT infrastructure and insufficient capacity for even basic upgrades. Harjinder Singh Lally from the University of Warwick pointed out the potential for wide-ranging impacts on the NHS, including disruptions to appointments, medical records, and staff payment systems. He suggested more frequent updates to operating systems and hardware to reduce costs and disruption. Most ransomware groups targeting the UK are believed to be based in Russia, with North Korean and Iranian groups also posing threats. The UK's support for Ukraine in the current conflict has heightened its risk of being targeted. Margaret Beckett, the chair of the Joint Committee, remarked on the UK's status as a highly cyber-attacked nation and criticized the government's inadequate response. The government, however, claims to be well prepared, citing a £2.6 billion investment in cybersecurity and the implementation of minimum standards through the NCSC's Cyber Essentials scheme. Meanwhile, on this side of the pond, the U.S. Senate yesterday confirmed Harry Coker Jr. as National Cyber Director in the White House Office of the National Cyber Director, where he will serve as the principal advisor to the President on cybersecurity policy and strategy. He will be the second person to hold the office since its creation in 2021. Coker is a retired senior executive at the Central Intelligence Agency and a career naval officer. He most recently served as executive director of the National Security Agency. The first national cyber director was Chris Inglis, who held the position from 2021 until February of this year. The Institute for Security and Technology convened a working group that released a study on the risks associated with increasing access to AI foundation models. The researchers found that greater access escalates the risk of malicious use, such as fraud, crimes, social and democratic disruption, and critical infrastructure interference. This access also raises concerns about compliance failures, removing human oversight, and capability overhang, where models develop unforeseen capabilities. On the positive side, wider access to these AI models can spur faster innovation and allow for more extensive stress testing, red teaming, and vulnerability identification by a broader range of developers and users. A number of companies have sent us news of their latest reports and research. ThreatX released a report highlighting that most API attacks involve programmatic access, such as automated interactions aiming to scrape data or exploit vulnerabilities. The report emphasizes the importance of robust anti-bot solutions and improved user authentication and validation mechanisms to counter these threats. Tenable researchers found vulnerabilities in the Edulog parent portal used in 7,500 K-12 school districts for tracking students' routes. These flaws, now patched, could have allowed someone with a free account to access API endpoints, potentially revealing sensitive information like student names, bus routes, parent contact details, GPS data, and even encrypted passwords for school district integrations. Sophos has analyzed how ransomware gangs interact with the media, observing their increasing professionalism in press and reputational management. This includes issuing press releases, creating sophisticated graphics, and recruiting English-speaking writers. These gangs recognize the newsworthiness of their actions and use media attention to enhance their credibility and pressure victims. Sophos advises the media to avoid engaging with threat actors unless it serves the public interest or provides useful intelligence for defenders. Abnormal Security has identified a BazarCall phishing attack that cleverly uses Google Forms to appear legitimate. The scam involves sending an email about a pending subscription charge and providing a fake customer support number. When a victim calls, they're tricked into installing malware. In this instance, the attacker creates a fake invoice using Google Forms, entering the victim's email address to ensure they receive a copy of the form, which is disguised as a Norton antivirus payment confirmation. The use of Google Forms allows the email to be sent from a legitimate address, increasing the likelihood of it bypassing security filters. eSentire researchers are monitoring two rival Russophone malware-as-a-service groups, BatLoader and FakeBat. FakeBat, likely a former client of BatLoader, has started its own similar operation. These groups deceive employees by creating Google ads and websites that mimic legitimate software sites, tricking them into downloading malware loaders disguised as business software. Both BatLoader and FakeBat are focused on infecting corporate employees with various malware types as per their customers' choices. BatLoader's attacks have resulted in companies being infected with Royal ransomware, Gauzy banking Trojan, credential stealers, and remote access Trojans. Ransomware group Ricida claims to have attacked video game developer Insomniac Games, posting limited data as proof. This data includes a screenshot and character art from Insomniac's upcoming Wolverine game, passport scans of employees, and personal documents belonging to Yuri Lowenthal, the voice actor for Insomniac's popular Spiderman games. The leak also features internal emails and confidential documents. Ricida is threatening to release the full dataset in 7 days and is auctioning it off starting at 50 bitcoins, just over $2 million. Sony, the owner of Insomniac Games, acknowledges the incident and is investigating, but believes no other divisions are affected. Microsoft's latest Patch Tuesday was relatively light, featuring a total of 35 vulnerabilities. This set comprises 4 critical, 30 important, and 1 moderate vulnerability. Additionally, the update includes 5 Chromium patches as part of Microsoft Edge. Prior to this release, only one of these vulnerabilities was publicly known. Notably, none of the vulnerabilities patched in this update were being actively exploited. Coming up after the break, my conversation with Tim Starks from the Washington Post's Cybersecurity 202. We're talking China's influence operations in Taiwan, along with a look back at 2023. Stick around. It's that time of year to start thinking about your New Year's resolutions and what you're hoping to achieve next year. As you start setting those 2024 goals, professional certifications should be part of your plan. Starting today, N2K is offering our full catalog of certification practice tests for just $39 each. Choose from our extensive library of certification titles from leading vendors like AWS, CompTIA, Microsoft, Cisco, and more. With over 25 years of experience in exam preparation, N2K has helped hundreds of thousands of security students and professionals feel exam ready. Visit n2k.com/certify to view our practice tests and get started today. That's n2k.com/certify. This episode is supported by Code Comments, an original podcast from Red Hat. Be honest, do you comment your code? You know, when you're working on a project and you leave behind a small note in the code, a code comment, to help others learn what isn't clear in the code. Sometimes we leave comments for other people. Sometimes we leave comments for ourselves, a type of breadcrumbs. There's a lot of work required to bring a project from purchase to production, and the documentation doesn't always cover changing team dynamics. So the Code Comments podcast, which is hosted by Jamie Parker, he's a Red Hatter and an experienced engineer. In every episode, Jamie recounts the stories of experienced technologists from all across the industry who share what they've learned from implementing new technology. So if you're interested in real stories from real people going through real change, check out the Code Comments podcast. You can search for Code Comments in your podcast player. We'll also include a link in the show notes. My thanks to Code Comments for their support.
And now, a word from our sponsor. The Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute is currently seeking qualified applicants for its innovative Master of Science in Security Informatics degree program. Study alongside world-class interdisciplinary experts and gain unparalleled educational, research, and professional experience in information security and assurance. Want to see for yourself? Student researchers will be presenting their capstone projects on December 13th and 15th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on JHU's Homewood campus. For more information about their projects and the MSSI program, visit isi.jhu.edu.
It is always my pleasure to welcome back to the show Tim Starks. He is the author of the Cybersecurity 202 at the Washington Post. Tim, welcome back.
Dave, sir.
I want to start off with highlighting a bit of a scoop that you and your colleagues at the 202 have here, reporting on on research from Graphica. What do you have here today?
Yeah, so Graphica is one of these organizations that does big research on influence operations, disinformation campaigns. And we obviously are preoccupied in the United States about our election and worrying about disinformation there. But they have found a disinformation campaign dating back to May of 2022 affecting the upcoming elections in Taiwan next month. Taiwan has been warning, the Taiwanese leaders have been warning that China is interfering in their elections. Graphica does not explicitly say that China is behind this. They say we can't attribute who's behind it. However, if you look at the research, there are a lot of indicators that this is probably Chinese actors, whether it's the Chinese government or not, because they're in Chinese language. They're Chinese language memes and videos. Their fluency in with the Taiwanese language is poor, and it just so happens that the campaign it just seems to be accidentally sort of favoring the organization, the political group that is well known for being closer to a pro-China position and criticizing the explicitly independence-minded political party there and candidate. So it looks like it fits into the pattern of things we've seen with China, and while most of it has been taken down, it's not entirely down. So it's interesting that there's still some elements of it that are floating around out there.
And is this a cautionary tale for us as we continue to roll downhill towards our own election season here?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, what's interesting about China and election disinformation is that they've kind of dipped their toe in it before with us, but not like Russia did in 2016 or even subsequent elections. There were signs in the last major election in 2020 that China was getting more interested in this, and 2022. And this seems like they're full-fledged into it with Taiwan. Now, Taiwan is of greater interest to them perhaps than the United States for many reasons. But if you combine this with the discussion that we've heard from U.S. officials that China is getting more brazen with its cyber attacks, not less, it seems like this would give them but this is it could be potentially a bit of a test run for them, for the U.S. They've obviously targeted, when it's come to Taiwan and the U.S. and there's been an overlap of disinformation, if you'll recall, when then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited not long after, they had a bunch of disinformation campaigns related in Taiwan to Pelosi and Taiwan. So there's a Venn diagram of overlap here and concern as far as the U.S. and Taiwan.
Well, let's switch gears here as we're coming towards the end of the year, and this is for the two of us, you and I, the last conversation we're going to have before the new year. Looking back on 2023, how does this year shape up for you when it comes to cybersecurity?
Yeah, it's I've been doing this for a long time. I know you have too, Dave. There are a couple things that stand out to me about this year. I've written about this and others have written about it, but I feel like it's maybe been underappreciated that the MOVEit-based attack, the ransomware attack, is arguably the biggest cyber attack of all time, but I don't think we've heard people talk about it that much that way, because it ultimately ended up affecting more than 2,000 organizations. If you look at the number of people who were affected by it, it's above 60 million. So the other thing that's interesting about that, of course, is that it's attacking these kinds of organizations that get you into other organizations. We've seen a lot of attacks like that this year.
Right.
So that seems like a wave of the future and a big landmark with one specific attack and the wave of the future on the attack vector.
It's interesting that MOVEit is, I guess the word that comes to mind for me is diffuse, and perhaps that's why it's not getting so much attention.
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, when you think of the very big attacks or big landmark kind of attacks. It's like the Sony attack, for instance, right? It was one big organization that was affected. This is lots and lots of organizations affected. The other thing that's interesting about this, and this is a multi-year trend, I don't know about you, I didn't use MoveIt before the attack. I don't think I'd even heard of MoveIt before the attack. Same thing with SolarWinds. I didn't know much about SolarWinds. So there's kind of all these sort of players that are big players in the IT world who you could attack and really reap a lot of gains from if you're a cyber attacker. And they fit into that pattern as well.
Any thoughts as we come into the new year here? I know we're all reticent to read the tea leaves, as it were, and make predictions. But is it fair to say that 2024 is shaping up to be just as interesting, if not more so?
Yeah, it feels like it'll almost be more interesting. I don't know if you remember coming into this year, there was a lot of talk about ransomware attacks being down the prior year, or at least not on the sort of steady rise they'd been on. Well, now that's back to being the case, that ransomware attacks are back on the increase.
Yeah.
One thing I've learned from being a cyber reporter, even though it's my job to try to anticipate the threats and trends, it's an exciting and scary place to write about, because as much as I think about what's next, it's never what I think it is. It's always something else that comes, like MoveIt being a perfect example. It's always hard to anticipate what the next thing is going to be. Nobody, even though there were indicators in 2016 that there had been some vulnerabilities in voting machines and that there had been attacks on presidential campaigns, nobody saw anything like that coming before it happened in 2016. Not the scale of it and not the way it happened.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I think about it a lot, and I have no confidence in my ability to predict where hackers are going.
Fair enough. I join you in that lack of confidence in predictive abilities. Well, Tim Starks is the author of the Cybersecurity 202 at the Washington Post. Tim, thank you so much for joining us throughout this year. It has been a true pleasure for me, and I look forward to our future conversations.
Yeah, man. I've loved doing it. Thanks for having me this year.
Hey, everybody. Rick here. Have I got a deal for you? On Tuesday, December 19th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'll be hosting the N2K Quarterly Analyst Call, which is normally reserved for our pro subscribers. But since it's the holidays, I've convinced the boss to open it up to the public. You're welcome. My guests will be my good friend Merritt Baer, the field CISO at Lacework, and Carolyn Wong, the Chief Strategy Officer at Cobalt.io. We picked the top 3 news stories from the past 90 days that will likely have the most impact to the InfoSec community in the near future, and then we will debate just why they are so important. It's going to be a blast. Register today by visiting the CyberWire, all one word, .com/analyst call, all one word. That's the cyberwire.com/analyst call. And I hope to see you there. And from the folks here at N2K, happy holidays.
And finally, a study by the Georgia Institute of Technology has uncovered that a significant number of popular websites are stuck in a password policy time warp, reminiscent of 1985. Their examination of over 20,000 websites revealed a concerning trend. 75% of these sites allow passwords shorter than the recommended 8 characters, with some even accepting single-character passwords. Additionally, 40% of the sites limit password lengths to less than the advised 64 characters. Surprisingly, 72% permit the use of dictionary words, and 88% allow the users to choose passwords that have been previously breached. Alarmingly, a third of these websites don't support the use of special characters in passwords, and nearly 40% accept 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the most popular and insecure password. The study also found that a significant portion of websites are still operating under the NIST 2004 password policy guidelines, with just under 17% following an even older recommendation from 1985. Stronger security standards are notably less common, with only a fraction of sites adhering to the more secure NIST 2004 Level 2 guidelines. Furthermore, the researchers' evaluation of website login policies revealed that nearly 2,000 domains dangerously transmit and store passwords in plain text. Around 3,200 websites disable copy-pasting for crucial fields, and numerous sites employ typo-tolerant password authentication, increasing the vulnerability to various cyber attacks. User enumeration attacks are made easier by the nearly 6,000 websites that provide revealing error messages. Only a minority of sites implement login rate limiting to prevent brute force attacks, and worryingly, 570 websites were found to be sending plain text passwords via email, a potential breach of the EU's GDPR. The researchers suggest that modernizing web frameworks and standardizing password policies could drastically improve online security. They recommend outreach campaigns and updates to popular web software to address these widespread authentication issues, emphasizing that software improvements could significantly reduce the number of vulnerable sites. In the digital security dance, it appears that while some are doing the cybersecurity shuffle, others are still slow waltzing with outdated password policies. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. We'd love to know what you think of this podcast. You can email us at cyberwire@n2k.com. We're privileged that N2K and podcasts like the CyberWire are part of the daily intelligence routine of many of the most influential leaders and operators in the public and private sector, as well as the critical security teams supporting the Fortune 500 and many of the world's preeminent intelligence and law enforcement agencies. N2K Strategic Workforce Intelligence optimizes the value of your biggest investment, your people. We make you smarter about your team while making your team smarter. Learn more at n2k.com. This episode was produced by Liz Irvin. Our mixer is Trey Hester, with original music by Elliot Peltzman. Our executive producers are Jennifer Iben and Brandon Karp. Our executive editor is Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow.